So welcome. You are hopefully at the right session. It's the party session. It's called Holding Space, Community, Connection and Cultural Safety. 3 Cs. I'm going to ask Perun, if you get your microphone and turn it on, to do us an acknowledgement, if that's cool.
Yeah, of course. Totally cool. So my name is Perun. I am from WA. I'm Yalama from Roban. And I'd just like to acknowledge the Yagara, Turrbal and Yagara people whose lands that we're meeting on today. I think when we talk about and when we do acknowledgements to country, there's like 2 inherent perspectives. There's the perspective of the people who call this place home and the people who are visitors. I myself am a visitor. So, you know, when I come to these places, I think it's really important, and traditionally as well, it's really important to announce yourself, not just to the country, but to the people whose country you're visiting as well. So, you know, you would announce yourself, you would announce where you're from, and that you intend to do no harm while you're here. So, traditionally you would find like the tallest peak, the tallest hill you could find, and then you would announce yourself to the country and anyone within earshot. You could also just light a fire, but like the intention is to just announce your presence and to let people know that, you know, you're here on peaceful terms, you're here to not cause any harm. So how about right now, let's all have a think about like who we are, the country or the people that we ourselves are representing, like where we came from, and just to say quietly to ourselves that we also mean no harm. So on the count of I'll say go, and then we'll just do it all together. So 3, 2, 1, go. I'm Perun. I'm from Perth, and I will do no harm while I'm here.
Thank you. Thanks so much. So, I'm Sukhjit. Sukh like don't be a sook, jeet like feet. You can tell I've had to do that for the first time today. I am, as well as being a comedian, lol, I'm not, but I try. I'm an indie multi-form artist, but I'm also 2 months into being the executive director of the Blue Room Theatre in Perth and Booloo. Thank you so much. Oh, this is my welcome party. This is the party I didn't get, Sam. I'm going to point at a lot of people today. You're going to get like some real stuff. Now, this beautiful being next to me, we have had an amazing phone COVID relationship for the last 3 years, but we've met twice, but she's my bestest friend. It's amazing how that has happened. Also, I don't want to use the word mentor because it's a bit of an icky word for me sometimes. We'll talk about that later. But I do see her as my guide, my spiritual guide, my life guide, my art guide, my film guide, my theatre guide. Beautiful guide.
It's the beginning of my cult, just so you know.
Yes.
You can all sign up later.
The necklace, it brings us in. But Katrina is a writer and director across film and theatre, and she'll talk a little bit about herself very soon. And of course, you heard from Perun Bonser, who is a former dancer, choreographer, theatre maker, and now is a filmmaker of doco and drama. I am a brown-skinned woman with curly hair wearing a very colourful dress with some cool sneakers on. I've got Katrina, who is also wearing a dark red dress with her hair nicely tied up. And we've got Perun, who's got a moustache, a green shirt and some jeans. So before we get fully stuck into it, now there might be some stuff. I'm hoping there won't be, but there might be something that comes up for you. And I just want to assure you right now that we've got some amazing representatives from TNA. We've got Nicole and we've got Yuhui. And we've also got Access and Wellbeing Coordinator Soraya, who will be made available to you. So I'm just going to look for, where's Nicole? Thank you, Nicole, Yuhui. Thank you. So beautiful. And if you need anything throughout the session, you need to tap out, totally fine. Just go see TNA folk. So, bit of context. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so what are we going to do today? We are going to talk about shared language. We're going to share some knowledge. We're going to gain some shared tools and some shared action, because action is really fun. That's the part that I get very excited about. You might have, there's been a couple of sessions that Katrina, Perun and I have kind of soaked up bits from, and we're going to weave throughout our session as well. But something that Katrina wrote an article a couple of years ago for Screen Hub, and there's a sentence I'm going to quote you right here. And she said, the most dangerous thing a person of colour can do is to talk to white people about race. And I totally resonate that. That's why I'm not doing this session alone, because I'm shit scared. So another form of cultural safety for me is to bring back up, to bring intergenerational experiences and involvement in this conversation, because I think that's something that I feel was quite divisive right now. So I thought, let's just acknowledge people have been doing this work for a long, long time. This isn't new. This isn't something that I can just come up with in 5 seconds. This is something that's been going on for a long, long time. So I also hope that this is an opportunity for us to join this conversation with some openness, with some respect, and cultural safety is a responsibility for all of us. So we're going to format the session in a couple of bits. It's going to be part chat, part workshop, part solo time. Get your notes app ready in your phone because you're going to be using it. And it's about opting in. So if you do feel like there might be some discussion points where we go off into pairs or small groups, but if you don't feel like talking to anyone, you can just do solo writing. That's fun as well. Whatever suits you, it's up to you how you interpret these exercises. Okay, I'm going to pass it over to you, Katrina, to talk a bit about today's session.
Right. Hello, selamat datang semua. My name is Katrina Irawati Graham. I am the mother of Shakina Jayanthi and Oliver River Raja. I am the grandmother of Abigail Asyawati, Otis Aman, and 4-day-old Charlie Vera. I am the daughter of Ati Asyawati. I am the granddaughter of Tati Suprati. And I am the great-granddaughter of Grandmother Mountain. And I say these when I say my matrilineal line when I first start, because I think in terms of generations that have passed and what they've given to me to be here, and I think about the generations forward, at least 3 behind and 3 forward, is what I've just told you, 6 generations of my family. So I had a question, which is, what is culture? Because we're talking about culture safety, and I just wondered if everyone's happy just to have a chat, maybe just to the person next to you, or if you feel like just on your own, like, what do you think culture is? Because it is a big kind of question, and we are kind of culture makers. Like, what actually is it? Just to define that a little bit. So just have a chat. Yeah, we'll give you a minute.
1 minute. Okay, so is there 3 brave people that would love to brave? What a patronising word. 3 people that would like to share. What did you talk about? What was your response to the question, what is culture? Thank you.
This is an amalgam of our response. Shared understanding and experience.
Shared understanding and experience.
Shared language and shared responsibility.
Shared language, shared responsibility. Oh, I got your notepad out as well. So prepared. I love that. Anyone else? What's going on over here? Thank you.
We just talked about the difference between culture as kind of arts culture and culture as lineage, heritage, language, and the rest of the split between that that we would understand.
Yeah, so 2 sections. There's culture in the arts and culture as? What she said. That's a great response, yes.
It's also the culture of the community, whether that's a school or a workplace, and that's about shared, for better or worse, values and systems that define that group.
Yeah, what defines that particular group? Shared community, language, school, workplace. Amazing. Okay. you want to go through the principles?
That's great. I just want to add one thing. So that's perfect. All of that is exactly right. That's what culture is. It's shared practices, ideas, customs, belief, and knowledge, and all the other things that you mentioned. One other thing that is a manifestation of culture is the arts. And obviously we're art makers and art creators. And so it's important to understand that we are an important part of culture as reflectors and as creatives. And I know you already know that, but I want to just put it out front so that we actually understand our position in this. Okay, so the principles of today are openness, care, curiosity, truth, and raggedy. I'm going to explain raggedy. It means that often when we talk about cultural safety or anything that's to do with race, people can feel a little bit like, I'm going to say it wrong. And you might, you will, probably, I do, all the time. And so it's a commitment to say to each other that it's okay to be raggedy. So if you've got, like, this is my draft version, I'm not really articulated this yet, but this is what you don't, it doesn't have to be perfect. Throw it down, have some trust and care that we can sift through it to get to what you're trying to say. And if we are happy to hold, is everyone happy to hold that for each other, that curiosity and care and to be raggedy? And the other thing is a strength-based lens. Often when we talk about culture and in terms of racism, we talk about deficit. You know, all the people who are, you know, deaths in custody, whatever, those things exist, and I'm not trying to take that away, but I'm trying to have a discussion today that is strength-based for all of us, no matter where you come from, who you are, or what you bring to the table, that it's a strength-based. Is everyone happy with that? Okay, perfect.
A thumbs up.
A thumbs up. It's not like, nah. Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, that's our agreement today. So I'm a practitioner, as Sukhjit said. I'm a writer and a director. I work in theatre as well as in screen. And I'm also an advocate and an activist. So I've spent a lot of time thinking and reading and discussing these things like daily, really. And also one of the things that I also get I have the honor of being a sounding board for many people who call me and say, this is what's going on for me. So I'm very aware of the level of harm and also the level of the way that people sort of navigate systems and the strengths and the fraught nature of that as well. But I guess what I want to say is that today, this is a snapshot about where I am right now and what I know now. And I'm constantly learning. So the things that I say today may be different when I learn something new next week. But this is kind of a culmination of a lot of thinking that I've had. So, and there's a lot of it. So I'm going to try and give you a sort of a homeopathic version.
I grew up with homeopathic. So much medicine at home. My parents were really into that.
Okay, cool. That's a drop.
Now, this is also going to be this. I think this should be a phone notes provocation.
Totally.
So if you do have your phone on you, or you've got a notepad, whichever one you prefer, or you want to just think in your mind.
If you have a brain on you, you want to just use your
mind. You
mind.
want to use your brain on you. I like that. We're going to respond to these 3 questions. And do you think 5 minutes is enough time to respond to these questions? And I'm going to say them out loud. Do you think 5 minutes? So the questions are, what does safe mean to you? Who is safe for you? Where is safe for you? And you might not know the response to all of them. And if you get stuck on one, just move on to the other one. This is just going to be for you to have a think about and get us in the zone before we get into what Katrina's got to share with us.
3 minutes probably. Yeah.
3 minutes. Let's do it. 3 minutes.
All right. If you don't mind just wrapping that up. I just want to drill down in that a little bit. So hopefully you've got a little list of what safety might, just a little snapshot of what that is to you. Just want to drill down in that just a little bit to say, like, when you say someone's safe for you or a place is safe for you, what does that actually mean? Like, what is it about that person? What is it about that place that actually makes, engenders, or kind of emboldens or brings up that feeling of safety? Just drilling that down a little bit. Just think about that. All right. So, just with those things that you've just written down or you've just thought about, is anyone just willing to just give us some? Maybe if we get 3 things from the audience that came up for you that. Why? Yes. Oh, sorry.
Hello. I think that's something about the capacity to disagree and to have an issue, to take issue or to speak up and know that that argument or discussion will be heard with the intention as opposed to just the outcome maybe, and that you are focused on something greater
Yep.
than that. Yeah.
Great. Okay, wonderful. So you can disagree and you know that they're not going to leave you. Right. Okay, thank you. That's great. Someone else want to give me something else that you've got? Thank you.
I realised that for me it was about the space and the people allowing me to unmask. So to, let my ADHD and ASD and Tourette's just kind of come out so that then I can be more in the moment and more in the flow.
Yeah. Beautiful. Somewhere you can unmask, somewhere you can be yourself. Perfect. Thank you.
I've just put down some words of what I feel safety is to me. Someone who is present, non-judgmental, openness, arms wide open, and heart activated.
Beautiful. Thank you. All right. Oh, sorry. There's one more person in the back there. If we could.
Before I say mine, Sukhjit, I just want to say 3 years ago I saw Fully Seek and I loved it. And I've been trying to tell you ever since.
Will you marry me?
FYI. Yeah, it's when I was working at the Opera House and I was like, we have to program that. And then COVID hit. And so my apologies, but it was awesome. Well done.
Love it. Business deals, wheeling and dealing, right over here.
That's the reason we did this.
Yeah.
Excellent, we're done.
For me, it's about being in places and people who understand your lived experience. As a mum with a child who's quite profoundly disabled, who yells a lot, being in a place where people just don't stare and make assumptions about you is really great.
I have a neurodiverse child and I totally get that. Thank you so much. So what I think that everything that you've said there, and I know that there's many other things that people have in their minds already, and that really, if we distill that down, it becomes to this basic issue, the basic human need to be seen for who you are in your entirety and to be loved and cared and accepted in that space. Does that feel like it? Yeah. And that is your basic human need. And if I think about like my small grandchild that's just got born, Charlie, it's like when she looked up at me, I knew that my job was to reflect back to her everything that she was and wanted to be is okay. And it makes me want to cry because she's so new. She's very little, very cute. Thank you for having that conversation. And the reason we did it is because obviously when we're talking about cultural safety, I wanted to just know what cultural is. Let's know what safety is. Let's put those two together and understand that when we talked about someone said cultural communities have their own culture, 100%. So our focus today with a racism lens, obviously there are many, many, many cultures. There's deaf culture, there's so much culture, and there's so much heterogeneity within cultures. Even like I'm Indonesian, grew up in Indonesia, from Orang Sunda, from the West Java, and my father's white Australian. It's like we, even within the Indonesian community, obviously there's 350 plus ethnic groups, so much heterogeneity. So I want to acknowledge that and say we are going to be using a anti-racist lens today. So next one is, what is cultural safety? So it's based in human rights, right? And human rights is about meeting needs. So it's really important that whenever we're talking about cultural safety, and whenever I write cultural safety plans or work with people on it, I say we have to understand this isn't a nice to have. This is a basic human right. And that is to express your cultural identity in a way where you are accepted and loved for who you are in your entirety. Right? And even if people don't agree with that, they can accept you, right? So that's the thing. It's fundamental to human dignity and identity. This is enshrined in the United Nations human rights, and we are signatory as Australia, as a continent, but as human beings that came out of human beings post World War II, right? What do we need to do to take care of each other? So cultural safety is the process that facilitates this rights by meeting cultural needs. That's all it is. It's just the process that facilitates these rights. Okay, so I'm just going to boopy. So the origins of the term, I feel like it's really important to acknowledge where terms come from. So Maori nurses and midwives in Aotearoa spoke some time ago about the ways that they needed to keep the Maori women and birthing families safe. Culturally safe, because they were working in a colonialist, in a white Pākehā system, and that's where they were coming to birth their babies. And so practice that some of which had been lost through colonialism and was being reclaimed, some of that was never lost and was trying to be practiced within a system, they were looking for ways to protect that so that the expression at a woman's most vulnerable moment could be full and fully sitting within her culture, and the family's culture and the community's culture, because it's never just a woman giving birth, it is everyone who's connected to that person. And so I'm going to acknowledge Irawati Ramsden, who is, if you look her up, she's amazing, and she was a key Maori midwife driver of cultural safety in Aotearoa. And also, often there are First Nation midwives here who work on birthing on country for a long time, and they also are working in cultural safety. And it's just a way to save ourselves, really. I really recommend you look up Ruth D'Souza's work. She's a bridge. She's also a nurse and an academic who writes a lot, who also works in screen a little bit now. And Ruth D'Souza has a podcast called Birthing and Justice. You do not have to be into birthing to understand that there is some amazing knowledge within that can be brought across to any other sector. And so I want to acknowledge that it comes from this space, but also that because they have had more time and more money than we have to talk and think about this. And they've tested it and tested it. It's still, as I say, always in progress alongside decolonization processes. So it's about us learning from other sectors, and this is learning from the health sector, and particularly from black women in Aotearoa. So that's the origins. So I want you to have a think about and talk to the person next to you if you like. What might the differences be between cultural competency, cultural consultancy, and cultural awareness? Oh, sorry, that's supposed to be cultural safety. It's my 3 a.m. typing, sorry. Cultural competency, cultural consultancy, cultural safety. Those three things. So if you just want to have a think about it and just maybe talk to the person next to you or whatever feels good for you to have a chat for maybe just 3 minutes. Yep. Okay. All right, great. So I'm going to bring you back. Hope you have a little chat there. I'm sure you've hopefully had a bit of a sift there to see what you've got. I'm going to show you a answer sheet. And you can grade yourself. So I just want to look about cultural competency. And I want to look at along the lines of responsibilities, goals, and power. So in cultural competency, and for those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically when someone says, okay, hey, Katrina, we're doing some stuff with Indonesian stuff in it, and I don't really know much about Indonesian culture, and I'll say which part of Indonesia? You're talking about Bali, where it's Hindu? You're talking about Aceh, where it's Sharia law and it's strictly Muslim? Are you talking about Jakarta, which is like a big city? Where are you talking about? So, and it's really about them saying, okay, it's actually Bali. We're talking about, and I was a director on a series on Stan called Bali 2002 last year, and that was definitely what was the discussion that we were having. And I'm going to just shout out to Alfira. Alfira, di mana kamu? Oh, there. Put your hand up, Alfira. Alfira was the most amazing cultural liaison who saved my butt and in that show and was very important. So if you ever want to talk about cultural liaison and her experience, which is a little bit traumatic as well, you can talk to Alfira, or me about it. So anyway, cultural competency is when I say, let me just tell you, here's the cultures. Don't pass things with your left hand, because we use that to wash our bum. We do wash our hands afterwards, but even so. And then the goal of cultural competency is cultural awareness. Like, I know not to use my left hand. Simple. But the issue of power is not addressed. Okay? Then cultural consultancy, I'm going to bring Katrina in and I'm going to ask her a bunch of questions. That's, again, individual responsibility. It's like me, whoever's asking me the questions, and I'm going to give them some answers. Could be multiple people, but it's still individual responsibility, and it's me sharing cultural knowledge. There is no sharing of power. Power is not an issue that's sitting within that relationship. Cultural safety, the responsibility is communal. Everybody is responsible for cultural safety. Number 2, the goal is justice and equity. And I say this all the time. So cultural safety, that is not a goal. Intersectional gender equity, that is not a goal. Those are outcomes of justice, right? When we talk about disability advocacy, disability activism. That is not the goal. The goal is justice. And the reason that's important to know what the goal is because it will depend upon what you measure. So if you say your goal is intersectional gender justice, for example, then what you will measure is how many women, how many non-binary, how many blah, blah, blah. You'll measure those things. But you will not measure the person who is sitting here, who is excluding and creating the process. So the power dynamic actually invisibilizes the person who is in the most power, who is creating this dynamic. That means you have to count women, right? So if the goal is equity, then you start saying, okay, who's got power? And you start asking much different questions and you measure different things. So understanding what's the goal is really important. So cultural safety, the goal of that is justice and equity. And the power is shared or abrogated, so handed over. So it's either shared or it's given over, right? And that is really important to understand that we're talking about power. Power is inherent in and who gets their needs met. And that is something that we see daily. All right, I'm going to click past that. And safety is meeting needs. So I asked you before, like, what's safety to you? And when we drilled it down, it was about being accepted. And it was about really getting your needs met. Needs of acceptance, needs for love, needs for people to see you. So I don't know if you can see this. It's a little bit small, so sorry. It's cultural safety. Now, I made this for the screen industry, so it's probably a little bit. But anyway, there's 3 layers of needs. So there's a need of the creatives, the people who are working on this, developing and shooting. So not shooting. Sorry, that's screen theater. Who are in the actual performance. And then there's the story itself. There's cultural safety that needs to sit within the story. And then there's the community. And that community can include people who are of the cultural lineage that's in the story, and it might be other people. So when I was doing the Bali 2002, for example, that was a story that was talking about the Bali 2002 bombings. Intense content. Very different to what the experience was for the Balinese community. So we had to really think about the Balinese community and connecting with that community. And Alfira had, had 100 extras. Every single extra got a half-hour conversation just to decide if they wanted to be in it, because they had to understand the context to know if they felt safe enough to be a distant extra. Same thing with people who are Muslim. We say, okay, this is about people who were terrorists who called themselves Muslim. And there was a massive backlash against mosques and against people who in hijab and people who are Muslim in Australia when that happened. We wanted to make sure that in our show we did not, and I'm from a Muslim background myself, I did not want to make sure that my cousins, my whoever, were going to be attacked on the street, right? So we had care for that community. And then there's the people who are white people who lost their lives, whose families lost their lives, who are the people and loved ones of people who lost their lives. That was community I had to care for as well. So there's all of that safety that sits within that and within the cast and crew in the story. So there's 3 layers, and that's important that we understand that those layers are interlinked. Yes? Oh, sorry. Can people in the back hear me? Okay, sorry. I tend to be quiet, so thank you. Just like, if you put your hand up and wave and do this, then I'll know. So sorry about that. It's like, since COVID, I feel like my throat is like... but anyway, there we go. Okay, now, and so I wanted to talk about trauma-informed practice, because obviously if we're talking about cultural needs, you cannot talk about this, and as I said, we're having an anti-racist lens on this without understanding the nature of colonialism and capitalism and the way that it sits in our bodies, all of us, more in some than others. Right? And we have to talk about that. So when we're starting to talk about cultural safety, we have to have a trauma-informed lens. We have to talk about trustworthiness, and we talked about that as a need to be trusted. We talk about choice. Do you have the choice to leave this thing? Do you have the choice to say, actually, that doesn't feel right for me? I don't want to work with that person. I actually can't work with that person. Safety. And empowerment and collaboration. So those things have to sit within a trauma-informed practice. You have to understand what the wounds are that already exist, and because this is needs-based, needs change. Today I might be like, it's hot, I need fewer clothes on. Tomorrow it's cold, I need more clothes on. Like, this is a simplified version of what needs are, right? They change, they shift. I've had a hard day, I need more hugs. And so I want to talk about also that trauma is the wound, and Gabor Mate's work around this. I'm really into traumatic healing at the moment, and it's that Gabor Mate says, like, the thing that happened for him, it was the Holocaust and losing his family. He can't change that. The trauma isn't the event. The trauma is the wound. And the great thing about that is the wound can be healed anytime, right? You can work on that wound. You can't change the event, but you can work on the wound. And so when we're talking about trauma-informed practices on stolen land, we have to understand that that wound is ongoing. Do you want to talk to that at all, Perun?
I think you. I mean, what would you like me to elaborate on? Sorry, what would you like? Because I think you did a really good job of explaining.
Okay, great.
Right.
Then let's go to the next thing, which you're going to talk to. Love you, Perun. Intention versus impact. And I think this is really important for us to understand when we're talking about trauma, is that you might feel like you didn't do anything. And like, I don't understand why someone's hurting you, and you probably wouldn't even know that someone's hurting necessarily. And this is very, very clear for when we talk about, when I talk about whiteness, and I talk to white people, and they often do not know that they've just hurt me deeply or that they've hurt somebody else deeply. And that is because we have invisibility of pain. If you want to subjugate people, then you have to dehumanize them. In order to dehumanize them, you have to have invisibility of their pain, right? Like when it hurts, you don't notice it, or it doesn't matter. It's not the same. So it's just a thing to be aware of, intention versus impact. So what I say is like, oh, you're standing on my foot. Like, I'm what? You're standing on my foot? You're what? My foot, and it hurts? Oh, I'm standing on your foot. Yes, you're standing on my foot. Please get off of it. It's like there's this whole thing. It seems simple, but it's actually the difference between intention versus impact. And if someone says to you, that hurt me, you have to understand that there's impact beyond your intention. So,
yeah, I will just make a quick point that, like there's, these things can happen through no. They can totally happen unintentionally. It can happen through accident or miscommunication. The older I get and the more I work, especially with other people, I realize that communicating is really hard. Everyone has their own way of communicating. Everyone has their own language. No one really explicitly says what they want or they need or what they're feeling. So, for me personally, when I'm just using Katrina's metaphor, like when someone's standing on my foot, if I explicitly say, in a lot of instances, if I explicitly say, hey, you're standing on my foot, can you get off, please? The person standing on my foot, like, I have to consider their feelings, because they could take it really, really badly, and they could feel like it could sound like that I think that they stood on my foot intentionally, like they're trying to do me intentional harm, whereas it could just be an accident, because it's not really, it's tough. It's tough to know everything about everything. It's tough to know everything about the experiences of First Nations people living in a colonized world. So, communicating is really, really hard. But I think, like giving everyone that space to communicate in a safe space, in a culturally safe way, I think is what I would like to add to the end of trauma-informed practice. So,
I think too the point that I want to draw out of that is that when we talk about culturally safe spaces, yes, you can have physically spaces that feel culturally safe. Like if you want to bring me nasi goreng anytime, I'm fine with that. But it's like also, I would say it's really about safe relationships, and that's what we're talking about, needs. And that's why I asked, who do you feel safe with? What makes you feel safe? Safe relationships is what creates safety, and that ability someone said to unmask, to disagree. Because someone stepping on your foot, they might not mean to, but they might. They might. And all of that thinking's got to go on inside your head before you say a thing. And meanwhile, your foot hurts. So I want to just talk about what's currently normalized. So currently, what's normalized, we've got this colonial on the left, we've got this colonial kind of capitalistic practice, and that's culturally unsafe. And so I just want to say this point that I forgot to say earlier, is that the industry is already culturally safe. It's absolutely culturally safe for the people who made this industry, right? 100%. This is culturally safe for white people, especially white guys. This is just the nature of patriarchy, colonialism, and all the lovely things. So on the side, we've got like low racial literacy. I could do a whole thing just on racial literacy, but it's like, how much do you understand racism? And also, how much do you read? How many people do you talk to? How much community care do you have for people of color and black people in your circle and people with disability and people? Like, how much do you actually care for people? And what's your racial literacy? That's really important. And so currently we have incredibly low racial literacy, right? And then it's also transactional, because that's the nature of capitalism, which was the driver of colonialism, obviously. So the thing with transactional nature is it's like when you go networking, and it's like networking, you come into the room, it's like, who can I meet with? Who can I? It's like that thing, I hate it. I hate it. It's not good at it. But what I really love is community, creating community. And so when I go into rooms, like, who can I connect with? Who can I be safe with? Who can I have care for? Who needs some space? Who's on their own? Like, those are the things that I like to think of when I go into a space. And so that's different. That's relational, right? So culturally safe is like you have a high and actively evolving, because it is always evolving to the day you die, this decolonization process and the understanding of race and racism. So on the other side, we've got culturally unsafe, we've got parasitic. Right? And I use that word, it's a hard word, but it is true. If you're extracting from someone, from their culture, and just for your benefit and not theirs, that is parasitic. And in fact, it can weaken whoever you're extracting, right? Symbiotic is you're working together. That's what culturally safe. And so, you can just figure if it's culturally safe by just purely thinking who's benefiting and at whose cost, which she'll talk to later. And then culturally unsafe practice wounds, which is why we have people wounded here today. I don't have to ask who's wounded. I know there's people here wounded today from racism in the sector, right? And then culturally safe heals. And that's like my great joy. It's like, I feel like is the ability to heal. And so on the other side, the reason that we move through this is because on the other side of justice and moving through injustice is connection. And I feel like when we're storytelling and we're creative people, we do it to connect. We do it for an audience. Like, you can tell a story in your toilet on your own. I don't know why it's a toilet, but anyway.
I used to tell stories on the toilet on my own.
It's because I was channeling Sukhjit. So, so you can tell it on your own, but it's not the same. I remember someone who's a cook saying, look, I cook, but it's really about when I see that face of someone else who's eating it. And I write music, but when I see the audience enjoying it, it's like that. Really, we're performers, we're creators. That's the thing that we want, is that connection. And so I feel like working through cultural safety allows us to deepen our connection to each other and to a better world. So that's why I love talking about this stuff. I'm going to quickly talk about cultural safety.
And also, just look at the body language of what just happened. I feel like I just want to point out how exciting it can be. That's been my 2023. How can we get excited about this stuff? Because even just, being asked by APAF to run this session, I have two options. And one option is to dread it because it's fucking scary and I get really triggered or whatever. And then the other half is to go, well, what do I want to get excited about? What do I want to dream about? And so I just want to point that out, that you're fucking awesome.
Aw, I'm done now. No, but I think really it is that sense of that love. I feel like that is why I'm here. I am here for the healing journey. So I want to talk about cultural safety plans. Now, again, this would be a whole thing, but we're just going to mention that when we're talking about cultural safety and you're doing a project, and you're invited into a project, and you think cultural safety is going to be something you need to think about, then start a plan. And what a plan is, it's a catalytic mechanism, right? So a catalytic mechanism is a thing that makes the invisible visible, right? So, for example, there was a lovely lady with her baby before. There is no creche here. And if there was a creche, and think about her bringing your baby, thank you for bringing your baby, lady, where she is, mama, is that there are other people here who are parents. But we don't know. It's invisible. When someone brings their child, or if there's a creche and there's children, we know. When I co-founded an organization called Women in Film and Television Australia, it's a national organization working towards intersectional gender equity in the screen industry. One of the things that we pushed towards was creating creches in all the conferences. And people would say, what's that? What's in that room? You're like, oh, there's children. Oh, and then someone walks out with their baby. Oh, there's parents here. and suddenly their needs become visible. So it's a catalytic mechanism. And a cultural safety plan is a catalytic mechanism because the stuff that's happening anyway, you're going to put down. So you're going to establish needs. And the question around needs, it's like, and I forgot to mention this about safety as well, it's like, who decides what's safe? The person who's receiving decides what's safe. Who decides if your foot hurts? Perun knows if the foot hurts, not the person stepping. So that's really important when you're establishing needs to know who you're asking and who gets to say what's safe or not. And then the duration of those needs, because I don't know if any other people, and I'm sure you've been on projects, Perun, and you for sure with Fully Seek, and definitely me as well, and Alfira with the Bali project, is that what we knew is that the white people on that were going to go off and do the next TV series. But we were still going to be responsible to community forever because we have skin in the game. So then it's like, who's going to meet those needs? That needs to be a very special and important conversation, and it needs to take time. You will not run this in a week, in a day or an hour. You need to take at least a week, and maybe even more, to decide how those needs are going to be met. And for me, I knew that I was going to be directing this massive show with so many people, massive sets, a lot of responsibility. I was co-directing, and it was important to me that I was not the only Indonesian person that people would come to, because it was going to happen. It was already happening in pre, right? And so I brought on a cultural liaison person, Alfira, and also I brought on her husband, Murtala, who's amazing, and they're both amazing dancers. You should check out their work, Slara Indonesia. And I knew that they had the trust of the community. I knew that I loved and trusted them. We go back to who you feel safe with, and that they trusted me. And I knew that that Alfira had high racial literacy, the things that we talked about in that thing, that she understood relational and symbiotic care and had a healing intent. That's why Alfira was the person I went to, please, 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 and thank goodness she said she'd come on board and work as cultural liaison. So that meant that when people had anyone, extras, crew as well, Indonesian crew, they could go to Alfira to ask questions, and she could feed back to me if it was needed, and that was our relationship. The other thing is budget the plan. Very, very important. Alfira needed to be paid. Alfira had 2 children. They moved from Scott's Head, moved their kids to Sydney for 3 months to work on this project. Initially, that childcare was not budgeted. Initially, that accommodation was not budgeted. We forced the hand, and it did happen. But we had to sort of have that conversation about that. So budget it. And the important thing is budget the reporting. Because we did not budget the reporting, and what it meant was all the information that Alfira was gathering, she sent to me, but I've just been like, I'm so tired, and I haven't created it. But if I was budgeted, and I knew I was going to get $500,000 to finish that, I would do it.
I think it's time for a little bit of movement. I sometimes, this is my little running joke, so Perun and I are in a relationship, sorry, just going to put it out there. And Perun used to be a dancer before he met me, so I never got to see that part of his life. So I try to find any opportunity for a bit of movement. And sometimes I apply for funding just so I can see Perun dance. But role reversal, dance for me, baby. But we're not. We're going to all get up. We're going to all get up. I know it's really hot and steamy. Oh, yes. Oh, look at this. Didn't even have to say much. We're all going to get up for a sec. And Perun is going to lead us through a very quick little exercise to get us shaking and moving.
So I totally understand how hot and humid it is right now. So if you don't want to get up and do some movement, that is totally understandable. I'm sweating. I feel pretty warm actually just from sitting down. So totally understandable. Breath. I believe breath and movement are connected. Fundamentally connected. So before we do any movement, we are just going to bring ourselves into our bodies, just become a little bit more aware of what our breath is doing. So I just want everyone to close their eyes, and I want everyone to have a think about how they're breathing right now in this moment. And now what I want everyone to do is to start breathing consciously. So take in a really, really, really deep breath and then exhale, release it. So breathing in through your nose and then out through your nose. Having a think about where your breath begins and where it ends. And so while we're breathing, while our eyes are closed, let's have a think about what our bodies are doing. Where are our feet? What position are our hips in? Where's our weight? What are our hands doing? Are they in our pockets? Are they beside ourselves? What do we think about our posture? What do we think about the angle that our heads are on? Do we feel aligned? Now, what I want everyone to do is to imagine a very, very, very small pool of water, a drop of water that is on the top of our heads, and there's a drop of water inside every single one of our vertebrae, up and down our spine. And right now, we want to hold that water on top of our heads, on top of each vertebrae. Now what we want to do, space permitting, is that we want to tip out each drop of water one at a time. So we want to tilt our heads forward, then each vertebrae in our spine forward individually, tilting, contracting, and just rolling down, leading with our heads towards our feet. And just hang here, just feel the weight of our bodies just hanging. Now we are going to roll up in the reverse order. So our lowest vertebrae tilts up first, then each vertebrae after that, our head being the last thing that comes up. And one more time. And in your own time, just roll back up. Keep your eyes closed. And so we're going to roll down one more time. While we're here, I want us to place our hands on our ankles. If you can, sorry. And again, this time, I want us to trace our hands up our leg, up our legs, up the sides of our bodies, on the side of our faces, and then reach up towards the ceiling. This time, leading with our hands, we're going to reverse that action. Try to keep your hands on your body for as long as possible. And tracing your hands back up, reaching towards the ceiling. Now I want everyone to look up and have a look at your right hand. And with your other hand, we're going to perform that same movement, tracing this down the side of our body. We'll bend our left leg, keep our right leg straight, still look at that right hand. You should feel a little bit of a stretch in your right leg. Great, and let's reverse that movement. And let's do the other side. Great, let's reverse that movement. Both hands up, looking up, and release, and we're done.
I've never seen you do that. That's so fun. We should do that at home. Wish you would stretch me out. Now, we're going to have a bit of movement at the end as well, so don't worry. There's more. There's more. There's always more.
The reason...
Turn your mic on.
Like the reason that I asked Perun to, and we thought it was important for us to include movement is because if we're talking about cultural safety, everything lands in the body. Every single thing lands in the body, which is why I was like, let's talk about rest. And I think, so it's important that if you're having these discussions to make sure that you're taking care of body and having space and time to be in your body because you know your needs best when you're embodied. Yeah.
And Perun, I'm going to throw it over to you to do your section.
Yes. So my section is about performative pain. What is performative pain? It's essentially performances and artwork that is based in trauma, or that is like about trauma, informed by trauma. And I want to just go over what these stories about trauma, what it does to your artists, what it does to the artists, the communities that this trauma is about. We'll talk about how, what does healing mean for those performers, for those communities? Who benefits from these stories that are being told, and who is at cost? So, we've already covered trauma-based art. So I just came off a documentary series about the relationship, directing a documentary series about the relationship between Indigenous communities and the police service. And that, even before starting directing that, it was already very, very traumatic, because I had my own experiences, traumatic experiences with the police before even coming onto this project. So it brought all that kind of stuff up, and so I wasn't really sure. I relived all that kind of stuff, and I wasn't really sure what that kind of healing was. it's something I just kind of put in the back of my mind and never really revisited or never really thought about until like a couple of years ago. But it also made me think about, what Katrina was saying before with the barley story. It was also, had me thinking about, I'm telling the story that has the potential to cause a lot of harm for my community, for communities all over Australia. So I have a huge responsibility to tell an authentic story, one where like their voices, my community voices were heard in a authentic way. But it also made me think about like who's benefiting from telling this story as well. Does this story actually need to be told, and like to who? Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Sorry. Do we?
We can go to the scenario.
Yeah,
we can go to an
do we
exercise,
go
and
to
then
the
you can
scenarios?
have a
I think
think.
Yeah.
Can I just quickly before that just say, like, because we've got at the bottom of this slide, like, who benefits? Absolutely. And that's physical benefit. That's like an economic benefit as well, but also at whose cost? And like, if we are in a community cared arrangement, and if we're in a culturally safe arrangement, I argue that, and it's an anti-capitalist arrangement, I argue that we share the benefits and we share the cost. Right? So just thinking about whose benefit, whose cost. Are these shared benefits and shared costs?
Yeah, I think, there was no... So things like healing, benefits, and at whose cost, these things weren't really factored into the production of the series. Not, at the very least, not initially. It was all about... There was no consideration for anything peripheral of what the concept was, what the core concept was for a lot of people that were working on the film, on the series, the production company. It was just all about, we're just telling this story, this really, really specific story from a very, very specific lens, and that's like our responsibility. Whereas myself, I have experienced all the things, I've seen all the things that have led up to someone, a First Nations person coming into contact with the police. It's not just that interaction, there's like tons of history that comes before that.
And intergenerational as well.
It's all intergenerational, and that was the story that I felt it was my responsibility that I had to tell, and I did. So when I'm thinking about what Katrina was saying about like who benefits and at what cost, I know that this series isn't going to. It's not going to solve intergenerational trauma, and it's not going to solve every single horrible thing about the relationship between First Nations community and the police. So at the very least, I wanted the people that we were interviewing, particularly the community, I made sure, I spoke to the producer, and we went out of our way to interview people from the community to give their side of the story about this relationship. And I wanted them not just to say, these are my experiences, but I wanted these people to give, to talk about what the changes that they wanted to see in the world. So at the very least, because it's a doco, you can't pay people. It's unethical to pay people to be a part of a documentary, to interview them. So what I wanted to do was to give them a platform to be able to voice their opinions about the change they wanted to see in the world. It was the absolute least I could do, and
But I'm wondering,
Yeah.
so I'm reflecting on, so with Bali, you had a cultural liaison person, and sometimes when Perun and I come home and we share our experiences in different projects we work on or workplaces, we've experienced what is not cool and should have been better, but then we can also maybe reflect on things that have worked. And I think sometimes when you're in that environment, like I just think about Perun in so many situations across the last 2.5 years of developing 2 seasons of this show and shooting it and producing it and now like watching it on SBS On Demand and NITV, I just think of like what could have the production done better when it comes to creating a cultural safety plan, all these things that we've, kind of learnt today.
Yeah, because there wasn't a cultural safety plan,
No.
was there?
There wasn't a cultural safety
Okay.
plan.
If we do the scenario, then people
Yeah.
can talk
Yeah,
about that.
yeah.
I think that'd be good. Is that, and then they
Yeah,
can
yeah,
talk
it's
about
perfect.
that.
Okay, here's a scenario. So you have 2 writers. They're collaborating on a project with First Nations content. There is a disagreement about the use of intergenerational trauma in the story. Both writers are now locked in a discussion about what intergenerational trauma is. One writer wonders if that even exists. The provocation being, how might cultural safety principles be applied in this situation?
So should we get into small groups? This time, not just one person, but if you could, and if you feel comfortable, to get into a bit of a 5-person, 4-person group situation. And we'd love you to discuss this provocation, which is how might cultural safety principles be applied in this situation? What would you do in this situation? And how long should we give it? How long we got? 10.
That's too much.
No, too long. Okay, it's 12:47. So maybe like 5 minutes. Solve the world problems in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Yep.
Yes. Oh, there's...
Okay, great question, Catherine. Thank you very much. And we
excellent
left
question.
that ambiguous deliberately.
Yeah.
Discuss that.
Intentional.
Thank you. The question that, in case someone didn't hear, Catherine said, what are the 2 writers Aboriginal? Are they? What are they?
We've left it.
We'd like you to discuss that and how that affects power dynamics within that space. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important. There's a question out here, how did they come together? But what's before this? I want you to think about that. What different things would make a difference to your answers? Yeah, it's really important. All right. Thank you, everybody. If you just want to hold that discussion, feel free to continue it during lunch, which is coming up, because I hope that we gave you something a bit meaty. Just wanted to say, or if you're vegan, a bit tofu-y. Thank you. We just wanted to quickly pop this up because we've got to finish this off. Just some of the concepts that we've talked about today. We talked about racial literacy, needs-based care, trauma-informed lens, performative pain, whose cost and whose benefit, cultural safety plans, and envisioning a future. So I just wanted to put that up here so we can just kind of revisit the things that we've talked about today. And hopefully those things came up a bit in what you're talking about just now. We're aware of the time. We are going to close off, but Perun's got a little thing for us. I'm going to leave this up for you, but I might close it off and then I'll leave it up afterwards. If you want to take a screenshot, you can come up afterwards. I'm happy to do that.
And we're figuring out ways to share this with you as well. We're definitely going to share it. We just got to figure out a way, and it's going to happen. You'll see it. You don't have to rush. Yep, amazing. Yep.
Perfect. All right, Perun. Sorry, ordinarily I would love to hear from everyone, but we don't have time, so I love you very much.
I would. I'm
Hear
really,
from
really
each
curious.
other.
Great. We are going to do finish this off with one last movement exercise. So everyone back on their feet. Thank you very much. We'll do what we were doing earlier. So we'll have a think. We'll close our eyes and have a think about our breath, go into our bodies. Where's our weight? Where? Oh, shit. Okay. So closing our eyes, we are going to go into our bodies. see what we're doing. Are we happy with our posture, etc., etc.? We've got 3 minutes. Sorry, we'll burn through this. So I want everyone, using your mind's eye, go back to this morning, and I want you to think about the moment that you woke up, and I want you to think about the colour of the ceiling. I want you to think about what you did next. Every single event, every single minute detail of your entire journey, your entire world that led you from getting out of bed to this moment right here, standing in this tent, listening to my voice. Have a think about that. And in your mind, I want you to focus on the movement. What movement were you doing? Every single little detail, as much as you possibly can. Now, I want you to take that movement from your mind while your eyes are still closed, and I want you to put it out into the world. I want you to start performing it. Keep your eyes closed. Keep your eyes closed. There's no one else in this room but you. Perform that movement. What are those actions? And stop. Open your eyes. Congratulations, you've all just choreographed contemporary dance.
Oh! Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much to Perun, Katrina, TNA, Sanya for being an amazing curator. I can't see you right now, but you're out there somewhere. We hope you have a beautiful lunch.